Welcome to the Story a Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy, encouraging you to be a writer today, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Julie here from the Story a Day podcast. We are, as I record this, heading into the final full week of September, which means the final full week of Story a Day September. Now, how are you getting on? Are you writing? Have you been writing? This is not a trick question. If you started this month determined to write a story a day and you're still going strong, brilliant, you're learning a ton. If you started this month intending to write a story a day and you are no longer writing, brilliant, you've learned some stuff. Maybe you've learned that you don't want to write a story a day, and that's fine. Maybe you've learned that you haven't got your life organised in a way that you can make writing a priority yet. So you can look at now, what were the things that derailed you? Because they're not just going to derail you during a month-long challenge, they're going to derail you every day of the year. And what can you do about that? There's a lot of mindset that creeps in when we try to make writing a priority. I was taking a class this week with a very wise friend of mine, and she's a psychologist, and it was all about finding your purpose and making changes to support your purpose. And the killer question was that people ask themselves, she said, was, what does it matter? Like when we're trying to make a change, when we're trying to do a thing that we want to do, some kind of habit, writing more, eating better, exercising more, being nicer to our children, being nicer to our friends, whatever it is, it's hard to sustain the effort, especially if this question creeps into your mind. And the question is, does it matter? Does it really matter if I write? Does it really matter if I write? Now, what my wise friend said was she hears when people ask that question, she hears the question, do I matter? So I wanted to take a few minutes on this podcast to talk about those two questions. Does it matter if you write? Of course, you know I'm going to say yes, but what I want to do is convince you to also say yes. And then the question about, do I matter? Do you matter? And of course, I'm going to say yes, and it's easy for me to say that to you, but sometimes that voice can creep into my head as well. Does it matter if I do any of the work here I do at Story a Day? Now, I'm in a really fortunate situation that I have a bit of visibility and people consume the stuff that I put out and the stuff that I get from other people and bring in, and they tell me that it matters. I get emails from people telling me that it matters, and you wouldn't believe how much that buoys me up. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't hearing from people that it mattered. Maybe I should be anyway, but it really helps to know that you're connecting with people. The bigger question of do I matter? I think it's really tied up when we sit down to write. There's the voice in our head that says, who am I to write stories, to have anything to say? I'm not important. I'm just me. I'm just, I haven't done anything. I haven't been, hugely successful in some sphere of life that I've got fame and fortune and everyone's going to want to hear what I have to say about it. I'm just a person living a life. But what could be more important than that? All of our experiences are unique and not unique. So I would like you to think about your purpose. If you're having trouble writing, if you've fallen away from writing, now with the huge caveat that for some people, there are, and for all of us actually, there are times in our lives when it's really, really okay not to be writing, because you're living and you're gathering the experiences, or you're recovering from an experience, or you're adjusting to a new experience, or you're grieving a loss and trying to put life back together in a new shape. And if you can't write, don't let that be another pressure on your life. Most of us writers agree that having a deadline is a wonderful thing. It focuses us. We manage to get things done for deadlines or challenges that we can't get done otherwise. And I think that's linked to this idea of purpose. So in the short term, a challenge or a deadline can give your writing purpose. I have to finish this story by Friday because I'm going to submit it. I have to finish this story today because I'm doing a story a day challenge. That gives you a kind of short-term purpose, but it's not a deeper purpose connected to your purpose. So I want you to think about today your purpose. And there's two ways, there's probably multiple ways, but I'm going to think about two ways of thinking about your purpose in writing. One is all about you, and the other one, which I don't want you to focus on so much, is about your writing in the world. But first of all, I would love you to take a few moments after you've listened to this podcast to just do a little writing about this. Writing. But journal writing, nothing that needs to be structured. And just ask yourself, how are you when you are writing? Like, what's your state of mind when you're writing, and you're writing regularly? What's your mood? How is your level of focus? How are your relationships? What does writing do for you on a purely, not selfish, but self-focused level? What does writing do for you? How are you when you're writing? And then the second question I'd like you to answer is, who does that impact? Like for me, if I'm not writing, I can get a bit cranky. If I am writing, especially if I get my writing done first thing in the day, and I have that sense that I've honoured that essential part of myself, then I can give to other people. And my family, the people I live with, are much happier when I'm writing because I'm happier. I've got more focus. I am calmer. I just have more to give them. I have more generosity. So just on a purely day-to-day level, when I'm writing, I'm a nicer person, and that impacts the people who come into direct contact with me every day. On a second level, once you've journaled about that, and if you already have that down and you already know that about yourself, then you could maybe skip this exercise, but it doesn't hurt to do it again every now and then, to just say, really, what I wrote 10 years ago for this kind of exercise is not exactly the same now, because your writing has changed and your life has changed and the people in your life have changed. But then I would like you to think about what your actual writing could do in the world beyond your own being, and honouring that part of you that is a writer, and honouring that purpose that you have, and all the things that writing does for you. You know, it clears out all the gunk from your brain every day, and it allows you to imagine a better world, and it allows you to feel hopeful, or it allows you to deal with issues, or just it allows, it's cathartic. But beyond that, and beyond the people in your immediate circle, who could your writing affect? Think about the writers who affected you at various stages in your life. When I was very young, I was just delighted by Spike Milligan's Silly Verses for Kids. The wordplay, the silliness, the absurdity of it, the rhymes, the little drawings in the book, these things delighted me. And they made me want to give that kind of pleasure to other people. When I was a bit older, Douglas Adams was a big influence, again with the funny, but also with the satirical, and and also the unusual turn of phrase. So that became something that affected me and affected my outlook. So everything you read, think about those books that touched you. When you get older, things that you've read in the last few years that have touched you and either transported you or educated you or opened your eyes to something or given you a sense of what could be. Write down some of those things, what writing has done for you. And then think about all the people out there, kids, grown-ups, old people, like separated old people like they're not grown-ups, all ages, all walks of life. Who needs what you have to offer? Who needs to be uplifted? Who needs to have their eyes opened? Who needs to feel a connection with someone like themselves? And then, after you've written about that, let's go back to the very first question I asked. What does it matter if you write? If you're doing this exercise, you should be feeling some emotions right about now. And I don't want you to feel guilt that you haven't written or that you're not writing enough or that you can't write right now. I want you to think of this in a hopeful way. There is a reason. There are multiple reasons for you to write. I want your stories to be out in the world because we need all the stories. We need connection. We need your voice and your experiences. You don't know who you're going to influence. So if your Story a Day September is going brilliantly and you're writing stories every day, congratulations. You're learning a ton about what you love to write, what you hate to write, about how to fit writing into your day, all of that good stuff. If you just heard about this Story a Day challenge and you're wondering, I can't really jump in, I don't want to jump in at the end of the challenge. I have you can jump in, absolutely. Just write for the rest of the month or write for the next 30 days. There is 10 years worth of writing prompts at the storyadays.org site. But I also have some things, I have articles and courses and all kinds of stuff for you. If you're feeling the urge to get started and you don't know how to get started, or if you are feeling like you're trying to do this challenge alone and it's tough to keep going alone, I have resources for you at the Story a Day site, which you can come and read. But I don't want to get away from the central message of this podcast, which is, does it matter if you write? Hell yeah, it matters if you write. For you, for the people around you, and for the people you don't know who need your story. But you don't have to do it all today. You do what you can today, and maybe you do a little more tomorrow, and maybe you take a day off the next day, but you keep coming back to it. I don't want you to pressure yourself. I want you to be very, very aware of the stage you are in if you're just starting out, or if your story is just starting out. It doesn't have to be perfect or brilliant, but I would invite you to consider that what it needs to be is generous and genuine, and you need to be a little vulnerable. And there's a community of writers out here and readers who value you, who are supporting you, and who want you to be this most complete version of yourself. As I record this, it is Saturday morning, September the 19th, and I live in the US, where we have lost a giant of the intellectual world this week, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If you don't know anything about her, start with the film that Felicity Jones was in a year or so ago about her life. It pulls a few of the threads of her amazing life. She's an incredible woman. And I just want to finish up today with a quote that's doing the rounds on the internet from the notorious RBG. And she said, and if you know anything about her, she's really immensely impressive person. This quote going around says, she said, "Reading shaped my dreams, and more. Reading helped me make my dreams come true." We all love to read, but without writers, there's nothing for us to read. And we can't just read the classics. We need new stories. We need stories from our lives. We need to read about people like us, whether they're living on imaginary planets or in history or in realistic contemporary settings. We need new stories. We need new versions of old stories. We need your experiences, my experiences. Yes, it matters. And you matter. And I have no idea how to finish this podcast. So I'll just finish now by saying I hope you have a wonderful creative week. If you have any questions, email me at julie@storyaday.org and just keep writing. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week and of course, keep writing.